All right, so now at the last time we did Dealmaker, Jeff was here from beautiful Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I shared a goal of his to everybody in the room. I said, Jeff is trying to raise $10 million for his hard money lending business. And Jeff's in Inner Circle too, by the way. But and then all of a sudden people started approaching him, and he started raising that capital, and he had to raise his goal. Can you believe it? And I said, all right, so I see what you're doing. You build relationships, they invest. Why don't you teach us, all of us, how you raise private capital? And he agreed to do that. So on your feet, and a big round of applause for Jeff Cichocki, please. Woo!
All right. Oh, good, I'm on. Ooh, that is bright. Rule number 1, do not look at the projector, just in case any of you guys were curious. Now you all have multiple colors. There's a lot of dots. Right, most of you I can't see anymore. This is kind of loud. I have a deep voice, it carries. Sounds echoey to me. All right, that's what I was just checking. All right, so I'm truly appreciative to be here. I do have something that I need to say before we get started. I'm about to let you guys into the cobwebs. Okay? Very few people really get to see what's between the ears very often, and kind of how I think and how I process. And I'm not going to tell you it's the prettiest thing you guys have ever seen. I think you'll find it interesting because, and I disclosed this on one of the Inner Circle calls, but I am autistic. I'm on the Asperger's spectrum. Now, that's interesting. It's not something that I say because I'm looking for sympathy or any of that kind of crazy stuff for people to feel bad. It sometimes can be a handicap, but sometimes it's a superpower, right? I tend to focus on the superpower side of things and not worry about the stuff that goes wrong. Now, why do I start out actually talking about how to raise capital by talking about autism or Asperger's? Because every one of you in here has a challenge. Every one of us has a flaw in our personality. Every one of us has a hurdle to get past, right? Do you know what my big hurdle is? Anybody just want to take a stab before we get into any of this stuff? Anybody know anything about Asperger's? Or I can be ridiculously hyper-focused to the point where feelings no longer matter. Wow. My wife has actually told me I'm the most self-confident human being she's ever met. And I said, really? Because I'm scared shitless every day. That was quote. That's exactly what I said to her. But the thing is, though, I don't know what it's like necessarily to feel the fear the way that a lot of you guys do, which is why getting between my ears will probably be a little bit of a weird experience, right? Because you're going to get it from a perspective and an angle that most of you don't think and process at, because the majority of people are feeling-oriented people, right? And as feeling-oriented people, there are things that we all look for. Now, it's not that I don't have feelings, I just have a much harder time connecting with them. And sometimes I have a very difficult time connecting with people because of that emotional disconnect that I have in my world. And yet, I'm overcoming it, which means that all of you can overcome it too, because I highly doubt most of the people in the room have something like that. Now, it's similar, I imagine, because I can only think about how you feel. I can't necessarily feel how you feel most of the time. But I imagine that the fear for you guys is probably the same effect as my emotional disconnect with other people. that challenge that I go through, right? Raising capital can be a really, really scary thing because we have to be vulnerable to talk to people, right? You have to talk about your business. Before I get into my stuff here, I do want to say one of the things that I really loved about what Alex had said and mentioned is that this is a business. It doesn't have to be a business for all of us. Some of this may just be a hobby. It can be whatever you guys want. You can scale it any way you guys want. But if you're trying to raise private capital and you guys treat it as if it's just a hobby, so will your private investor. They will treat you as a hobby, which means organization and focus on what you guys really want is going to become more important along the way. So let's start out with the typical disclaimer, right? I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax professional, I'm really just an opinionated guy. That's what you get, right? You get a guy that is intellectual, non-feeling with an opinion which makes it very strong. And as John Heyer puts it, I have a high opinion of my opinion, okay? So obviously the disclaimer really means don't listen to me. Hear what I say, pull out the pieces you want. Do not do verbatim, word for word, exactly what I do. Each of you needs to be yourselves in how you guys approach things. So who am I, right? I already started talking about the issues that I have mentally to get past for you guys to kind of understand what we're going to talk about and why, right? But I have a wife and 5 small terrorists, right? Commonly referred to as grandchildren, in case any of you guys were curious. That's what terrorists in training are. I've been an investor for 18 years. I didn't start out as a lender. I started out as a flipper, like almost everybody else, right? Flipping and landlording, that's where I got my start. And the reason I became a lender was from being in a room similar to this. I was at a RIA. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but I just kind of had an epiphany that we all had the same problem, which is raising capital, because real estate is cash intensive. It doesn't matter if you're getting it from the bank, if you're getting it from yourself, if you're getting it from your parents or your friends and neighbors. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's a capital-intensive business, and we need capital from other places, right? So that's how I got started. I started lending about 14 years ago-ish, a little more than that. I'm terrible with dates because logically it makes no sense to me to remember dates. So I don't know when I do certain things. I just know about. That is a problem for my anniversary and birthdays for kids, right? It's kind of a weird and awkward thing. Not a whole lot. I mean, you guys have probably already read through half the stuff. Most of the about me isn't all that important, quite honestly. It's just kind of more about you from this moment forward. And so we have to start this presentation with a question. This is a really important question, and this question does require participation. And I need everyone who answers this question to raise their hand if this applies to you, okay? So here's the question. So who in this room, or who do you know, like you know someone, that's ever gone out, put a house under contract, went out, got bids, talked to contractors, got the whole plan done, you were super excited, wound up, you're like, man, this is amazing, I cannot wait to lose my ass. How many people in here want to lose money, right? Nobody. Nobody wants to go out and do these things. And the truth is, you guys would never put a house under contract if you thought you were going to lose money, right? Intentionally. Yet, sometimes it happens. So why is it important to start out thinking about that? In insurance, in banking, lending worlds, there's this thing that we call underwriting. Do you guys know what underwriting really is? Or is it just kind of this mystery thing to you guys? You know, we just know everything goes into underwriting, right? But what is it really? It's risk management, it's risk assessment. Every single deal that you guys do, are you not underwriting? Everybody underwrites. Underwriting isn't something that you guys should be afraid of. It's actually something that you guys should embrace more and talk about more and embrace more and present more. Going back to the whole concept of if you guys really want to scale and grow and raise capital and stuff like that, you need to present these things. You can't run and hide from it. You need to talk about it, right? And it's okay to talk about the times that you lost money. Failure is a significant part of success. If you were to go into battle, would you want someone who's completely and totally untested, or someone who's got the scars to show and prove that they can make it through? Who do you want to do business with? You want the experience, right? Because that's what we call it. We don't talk about it as the scars of life or the scars of real estate. We talk about it as experience. What's one of the questions that lenders, professional lenders, always ask about? Track record, experience, right? Let it shine. But don't shy away from the stuff that you failed on. Talk about how you learned. So as you guys talk about what you're learning and what you're doing, there's a big question that has to be asked if you're going to talk to other people about the capital that you're asking them to invest with you. Because it is as much an investment for them as it is a loan. The loan is just the structure that is put into place to help safeguard their investment in you and in that project. So what's missing? What do we commonly miss all the time? So far, every single thing that I've talked about. And we're only scratching the surface. And on I think it was the last inner circle I was on there, and Jim had asked about, you know, me talking and my presenting, and I said, yeah, I'm so absolutely going to get into all of those things in the 3-hour window you gave me. Which is not true, because I don't have 3 hours, right? I'm hoping to actually polish through this in about 45 minutes and spend some time actually talking with you guys and fielding some questions before we got to move on to the next speaker. So hopefully that happens. If not, that means I talk too much. So, in order to try to figure out what's missing in the presentation and in the way that you guys communicate, you have to start making some mental, psychological shifts in the way that you think. This is a huge key component to conversations that you want to have. What's in it for me versus what's in it for them? I'm a professional lender. I'm also a professional capital raiser. Do you know what the number one thing, though, that I'm asked to say by borrowers? Nope. They ask for interest rate and points. That's all you guys ask for. Do you know what those two questions are all about? What's in it for me? Do you know how discouraging that is? A really good lender is not a lender. They are your financial partner in the deal. That's why this is a psychological shift. This is the part of between my ears that starts to make things scary for a lot of people, because we as human beings are ridiculously selfish. That's just normal, natural human being stuff. It's not evil or wrong or bad. It just is. It's part of us. It's what makes us human. We're all selfish beings. But if you want to work with other people, you have to learn to bridge the gap between what's all about me and what's all about them. Because the best relationships are when the two actually work in harmony together, not in balance. Harmony. I actually hate it when people say, I'm looking for work-life balance. Or I'm looking for, whatever balance. Do you know what's wrong with balance? And we all say it. Even I slip up every once in a while, as much as I'm against that phrase, right? Because it's habit. How do we portray balance? A teeter-totter, a scale system, right? It's doing this. Did you know that one side is always in opposition of the other? You ever think about that? If you're thinking about work and you want your work life to get better, what has to go down? Your life. It has to go down. That's just how it works. So why in the world do you guys want to figure out balance? Because on an infinite spectrum, there's only one small point in time that is almost impossible to keep in balance. That's it. It's just this tiny little window. So harmony is the word that I've been trying to shift my own mindset to being. It's part of the what's in it for me versus what's in it for you, because I want to find a way to improve my work life and improve my home life at the same time. I want to be more successful. I want to do more projects. I want to raise more capital, but I want to do it in a way that benefits the people around me as well, right? My wife, the kids, the grandkids, my neighbors, people at church. Everywhere I go, I want them to be able to benefit from the things that I accomplish. And I would bet that most of you in the room, if you really sat back and thought about it, you want pretty much the same thing. Because that's not something that has anything to do with emotions per se, but yet it kind of does, right? So let's talk about a key concept, and I can twist this concept into 52 different ways to sell it, which, by the way, anybody in here think I have something to sell today? Just I'm curious. What am I selling? Information, ideas and concepts. I just want to quick specify that because every single one of you is in sales. Every conversation you have with someone is in sales. You're trying to convince them that you're right about whatever it is that you say. Right? Because we all got to be right. So just remember that. The relationship is a sales process. We just don't think about it that way most of the time because we're trying to create a relationship. Right? And for some of you, that's ridiculously easy, especially the extroverts in the room. I'm an introvert without feelings. Right? Except when I'm in places like this. That's the crazy thing. If I didn't actually tell you that I'm an introvert and that I don't have these struggles, I've learned in my 52 years of life to hide damn near everything that's wrong in that Asperger's front. And so most people don't realize it. And I've learned to shift, as some of you will have to do, to shift from your introverted side that's very shy and I don't want to brag. Because it's not about bragging, it's about communicating. It's about sharing, right? And so when you share stuff, what do we got to share? We got to share the 5 most important principles of capital with people. And what are they? What does it take in every single deal? They're all on the board. I actually put this together, 3 events ago from here. 3 or 4 events ago was actually my first event here. And I was sitting at this table here, and Jim knew I was here, and they did a real quick panel on lenders in the room. And so last second I got asked to come up. And during that time frame, we were still fresh on the COVID thing, and we were all talking about the PPP programs. And I made a joke to the room and I said, shit, I've been doing PPP programs since long before the government got involved. Right? Because it's people, property, and paperwork. That's the 3 Ps. I upgraded it to 5, which is why I put them on the board for you, and turned those 3 Ps into a formula of 5 Ps. Because this is how we all make money. This right here is the message that we all have to be able to convey when you raise capital. Jim has always said your network is your net worth. So what is people? It's our network. Where's the easiest place to raise capital? In places where people know you. Why? Because they already have a relationship with you. They already trust you to a certain extent. They may not know you financially, but they still trust you as a person. You know, you've had multiple conversations with people, and they feel like you're a friend. Even if you're only at an acquaintance level of friendship, you're friends. Do you guys think people are important in this mix? The majority of lenders out there don't think about the people part of it. Right? So I'm putting my lender hat on for a second. To me, people's critical. And I do my damnedest to screen people as I'm going to give loans, or even if I'm raising capital from them. Because if I don't feel like we would work well together, I don't want their money. It's not worth it. And I have turned down millions of dollars from people who have wanted to give us money. Last year, I had someone offer me $20 million to put on the street for them. Do you know what I still don't have? That $20 million. By choice. Because the strings sometimes that come with things aren't worth it. And so that's something that's really important to remember and keep in mind as you think about the people part, because that's why I turned it down. I could make a ton of money with $20 million, not just for myself, but absolutely for that person who wants me to put that money to work. I could absolutely make them a ton of money. But money isn't the most important thing. It's not first on the list. Where is it on the list? Last. Now, for a lot of people, money is a huge motivator, right? We all want more of it, whether it's a motivator or not. But for some people, money is just a huge motivator. If you put money in front of people, what happens? Money tends to make you more of whatever you are. And if you make money the focus of it, that's all you'll be about. And it's ridiculously difficult to connect with people. Now, I know that better than most of you because I got to struggle with that to start with. But money can never be number one. There's a reason that these 5 P's are in the order that they're in. It's not random. I didn't just say, oh, you know, it sounds better when I say it this way. No, it's actually, there's a reason for it. Whether I'm raising capital to fund one of my own deals or raising capital for our hard money lending business, people are always first. The relationship matters a ton. I care truly and deeply for people. It's one of the few things that I connect with really, really easily. But it's not something that is easy to share, like, say, joy, happiness, right? Excitedness. Caring for people is something that tends to stay inside, and it's hard to convey, oftentimes. But I do. I truly care about people's success. I care about people bettering themselves. I would like to bring every single human being I can with me on the journey I'm on. But here's the interesting thing. Even if all of you felt exactly the same as I do, that's not how it works. Because every one of us is on a slightly different journey. As much as we want to bring people with, that relationship, that connection that's formed, that business, however you do it, is more important than anything else. William, who I've never met before, but I've followed on Facebook for years, is going to talk about Subject to. Do you think that Subject to purchasing has anything to do with the relationship that you create with the people across the table? Of course it does. I would be willing to bet you that if you guys pay attention to all of the speakers over the next 2.5 days, there's going to be a common theme. Whether it's spoken directly or indirectly, you're going to find out how much people matter in all of the puzzles that we're all talking about and sharing with you guys. Property is number 2. Why is it number 2? That's the trust factor. See, you all go out and you do deals all the time. And you go to hard money lenders or banks or wherever it is, and sometimes you get turned down because the property doesn't fit the portfolio or the box, right, that we each have as lenders. But is it important to do? Yeah, it is. Do you guys underwrite? We already talked about that. You guys underwrite. To those of you in the room who lend money privately, do you know what one of the biggest mistakes that I watch happen all the time? You don't underwrite. You don't underwrite the same as you buy. That's what I mean by it. I go out and I want to buy a house, or my business partner Derek is buying a house. We're going to flip it, keep it as a rental, whatever it is we're going to do with it, right? We underwrite the hell out of that thing. We want to make sure that when we stick our hard-earned money, or if we grab some private capital from one of our investors and we partner up with them and we do a deal, we want to know that deal's going to work. For some strange reason, when private people do this stuff, do you know what they forget to do? Which I've already said, to do that. We get excited because lending our capital is so easy. Because we jump to number 3 and go, it's just paperwork. I just sign here, wire some money there, and bam, I'm making 10%, 8%, 6%, 12%, whatever it is. That's the thought process that we go through. It's like, oh my God, they seem like nice people. And so I'm just going to give them $100,000 of my money. And strangely enough, we all have a hard time giving our kids $100. Ever thought about that? Stranger walks up to you on the street and says, hey, can I borrow $100? If you're in a really generous mood because, they look a little bit downtrodden or whatever, and you feel like, man, they probably need the $100 more than I do, yeah, I'll lend you the money. Do you expect to get the $100 back? No. But if you lent somebody $100,000, do you expect to get it back? Well, then why the hell aren't you guys underwriting? It's a simple question. We get stuck on the people. People is critical. That's why I talked about it first. If there's something about those people that just doesn't quite feel right, please don't let the greed button get pushed, because the greed button is pressed by the property. And if you get somebody that's a real smooth talker, right, and they've just kind of got that charismatic personality, and you're just like, oh man, which is easy for me to avoid. Superpower, just in case you guys are curious, right? Allows me to see through the crap most of the time because I don't get connected that way. I don't feel what they're trying to sell. As a matter of fact, that's a huge turnoff to me. Because, that's like the salesmanship BS detector is going, that's like used car salesman stuff right there. That's how it feels to me. It's the best I can describe it to you, but my radar is going crazy. But yet, oftentimes, as someone who sits in my spot and watches people like crazy, right? Because I've spent my whole life wanting to want to things, because I don't have the certain things that what I consider normal people to have. So I watch and study people like crazy. That's why I'm pointing that out to you guys, because I watch all the time. In my house, just about me slide, one of the things it said on there is I have fixed lots of other people's screw-ups. I could almost make a career out of it. Helping people restructure deals, redo their financing. Most of the time, I'm not even redoing the loans for them. That's just the part of me that says I truly care. And I can't stand to see people lose, especially when it's something so simple that if they had just done A, never mind B and C, if they had just done A, they would have been fine, right? That stuff's critical. Unfortunately, we stop underwriting, we get stuck on property because we think property is the cat's ass. We think it's number one, we think it's the most important thing, and it's not. Why is paperwork number 3? Paperwork is your cover your ass. That's what it's there for. But paperwork is actually completely and totally useless. You can have the best paperwork in the entire world, but if you can't get through the people and the property, what do you need it for? Good paperwork's important though, really important, because that's how, when you find out that you did business with someone that was the wrong someone, that's how you get your money back, or at least most of it, right? But that's the way that you can create leverage. That's why good lenders do it. I have watched private people raise money from private people and never put mortgages and notes in place, or deed of trust if you're in the other states, right? I'm in a mortgage state. I have watched that happen so many times it's not funny. I actually got to work on an issue where the buyer of the house somehow convinced the title company to hand him the signed mortgage and the signed deed and record it himself, and he's the borrower. He got the note too. He got it all. He got all of it. I can feel the holy shit that you guys all feel right now. I can feel that. That happened. That kind of stuff happens more often than you guys think. The guy that did that has probably some of the best charisma of any person I have ever met. That guy could sell ice to a fish. Like, fish don't need ice at all, ever. People need ice to keep our drinks cold, right? Doesn't matter where in the world you are, we need ice occasionally. Fish don't ever need ice. He could sell ice to fish. That stuff happens. Why is the paperwork important? Because if somebody walks out the door and they have the mortgage and they have the note, you're screwed. So that's to those of you in the room that lend money. How many of you guys as borrowers, when you're out raising capital, you tell your investor, I'll do the paperwork for you. I'll fill it out, I'll fill out the mortgage, I'll fill out the note, I'll take care of you. Because that is great customer service. And a lot of times the lender that we're dealing with is relatively new and they don't know, right? And so you're trying to help make sure that it's not uncomfortable for them, because especially when they're starting out, it's uncomfortable. Anybody in here have any guesses as to why you should never do that again? Anybody in here know what it means to practice law without a license? I know Mr. Watson will confirm that if you fill out mortgages for other people as legal documents, you can get in a lot of trouble. Have I heard of anybody that's done it that has gotten into trouble? Not personally. Do I believe that people have gotten into trouble for it? Of course. Should someone competent, which Mr. Watson corrected me in how I talk about attorneys, should you have someone competent do your paperwork for you? Yes, you should. I can tell you, I'm so grateful for that word, because I have dealt with some very incompetent attorneys along the way who are real estate attorneys and don't have a clue what I do, because their version of real estate that they do doesn't have anything to do with lending, or they only deal with banks and they handle foreclosures, but they're not dealing with private stuff. Should you have the title company fill out the paperwork for you? Anybody want some help with the word no? Don't have the title companies do paperwork for you either. Do you know what happens when you use the title company? They will hire an attorney to do it. But the attorney has never had a conversation with you or the lender. The title company just said, what was the rate? What was the term? What's the fees? What do I got to fill out? And then they go and grab whatever the state bar form is, and they use that, which will work in a foreclosure, but it's going to be rough on the way through as a private person. Whose favor is that note written in? No one's. It's in no one's best interest. It's definitely not in the borrower's best interest, although in some respects, because it's not in the lender's best interest, that kind of does tip the scale in one way, but they're designed to be neutral. For those of you in the room that consider lending capital, do you have good paperwork? Did you get it from a competent attorney that understands lending? If they don't, I promise you there are flaws in your paperwork. And I promise you the only way you'll find out about those flaws is in the middle of a foreclosure. That's the only time to find out how screwed it is. So now, as you're raising capital, you guys have to keep those first three in line. How many of you guys have walked up to people that you thought would be great private lenders, and the first thing you offer them is, I'll pay you 10%, or whatever your magic number is? That's one of the first things out of your mouth. I pay 10%. Anybody? I've done it. I've made the mistake. What's the most important thing to the lender, the person who you guys are trying to raise capital from? What is the most important thing to them? Return of principal. See, the reason that I added the equal sign in there and extended this out to 5 Ps is because the only way you get your money back as someone who lends money, and those of us that are trying to raise capital, our job is to make sure it gets back to them. But you don't even get to profit unless you were able to return all of the principal. You have to have them all. You have to have the first 3 in order to get to the other 2. That's why the equal sign is there. It's not all pluses. These 3 together equal those 2 for your private lender. So how do you guys convey that to your capital people? Do you know what one of the easiest conversation is? Or one of the easiest ways to have the conversation about all of these fun things? By not talking about the money. If you guys would just stick with people and focus on the relationship, what's in it for them, how the property will secure them, how the property will secure the return of their principal. Because a lot of people who are willing to lend money but just don't know or understand things in our industry yet don't think about things the way that I'm talking about it. I know when I do a loan, the very first thing that I think of is how much money are they going to lose? I wonder when I'm going to have to foreclose. Do I want to own this house? Do you know why I think that way? Because you don't. Remember the question in the beginning? None of you think you're going to lose money when you do a deal. When you're dealing with raising private capital, this is why talking about failures or talking about potential failures or talking about where the weak points are, these are critical conversations that because you have to make people know, like, and trust you. Those are the 3 fundamental things, and we all know it. So the entire conversation has to revolve around those three things, and we get to those three things by creating a relationship, right? They gotta know you, they gotta like you, and they gotta trust you. And you don't get to trust by showing them a property, and you don't get to trust by talking about, I'm gonna pay you X% is your rate of return. And I know that's counterintuitive to what almost everybody's taught. There are exceptions to everything I said. Everyone in here will find some person to raise capital from where it will not work in the exact order that I said it was going to work. And that the interest rate, because they're selfish, greedy people, they themselves will be so focused on the money, they won't pay attention to the rest. They're like, oh my God, I just heard real estate was awesome and you're going to pay 10% and I'm in. And which people are the ones that typically lose the most money? It's those guys. Now, as borrowers, as buyers, is money a good thing? Of course. It's a tool. The more tools you have, the more that you can accomplish in this world. The more of an impact you have in whatever that is. It doesn't matter if you're charitable or not charitable. I don't care if you're completely selfish and self-centered and the only people that you care about in your entire world are your kids, your wife, grandkids, that kind of stuff. Even if that's you, look at the impact you can have if you create the relationships that you need to have with people to make your business successful. Now that I've sucked the wind out of the room, right? Not probably the presentation you guys were expecting. Thinking about the things that are really important, honestly, I have a difficult time getting super excited. That's just the flaw, right, that I have. Right? It makes most of the times that when I present and I speak, I'm not the most exciting guy to listen to. But yet, usually what I say is relatively interesting, and it's almost always excruciatingly accurate because I am logically oriented. Right? That's all I have. That's one of the things that Asperger's is. It's an impairment within the brain. As it turns out for me, which is why I don't have a lot of feelings, it's the right side of my brain that's impaired. So I run and function completely left brain. The beautiful part is your guys' job is to take what I said and try to apply it to your world, because you can't use mine, right? The people that I connect with the most are people who are logically oriented, IT people, engineers, right? They're all the geeky ones, right? HR professionals, accountants, geeky people, right? I love geeky people. It's easy for me to connect with geeky people. We're all just logic. My wife is ridiculously emotionally driven. Imagine her challenges, right? But you guys get to take all this stuff and keep going, right? Now, I just saw the 10-minute sign pop up, if I could read that correctly. Is that correct? 10 minutes? Perfect. All right, so we have about 10 minutes left, which means I am actually right about on time for this. So I'm only 5 minutes longer than I thought I wanted to be. So now the question is, what do you guys really want to know instead of just what I wanted to talk about? What are you guys struggling with? What are specific conversations you guys have had issues with? Who wants to go first? No one? You're all afraid of me. That's awesome. Yeah.
What's your number one underwriting advice?
So this is one of the hardest pieces for me to do as underwriting, and it is the people. Someone's credit score for me doesn't tell me their whole story. Lots of bad things happen to good people. A divorce alone can just wipe out your credit, right? Are those things important? Yes. But do they tell the whole story? No. you have to get to know people and you have to create the relationship, because what you're really trying to figure out is their character and their integrity. This is a bit of an artistic kind of thing. There's not a science that goes with trying to understand if someone's honest. But that's why you got the paperwork, right? Because the paperwork is how you keep honest people honest. It's also how you keep dishonest people honest. It works for both. That's the amazing part, right? But trying to really get through the people and understand stuff. Because the one thing that I have learned point blank, period, this is a universal rule and it always works this way. If you are doing business with a shitty person, and it is the best deal in the entire world, what's the likelihood of failure? Fairly high. But if you're doing business with someone who is of very high character, very high morals, good ethics, solid people, and the deal goes sideways, what's the likelihood that they'll walk away? Low. They'll stick it out with you. To me, that's why character and integrity are key. That's part of why I've turned away money. It's a reason why I turn down loans. I don't want to do business with not so good people. I mean, we have an internal kind of motto that goes in and amongst myself and our staff, and it's good people, good business. But not all good people are good to do business with, right? Because they can be really nice people, but again, if you're not professional either, then that kind of sucks too.
Along those lines, do you have anything in particular that, I know it's not going to argue fast, but is there something that you always ask that, or some questions you're always looking for, or something that they're doing to?
So there's no real specific question that I ask. I'm playing it by ear a lot. A lot of what I'm listening for is tonality. I'm listening for their greed, right? I'm listening for the what's in it for me versus what's in it for them, which is me in this case, right? Do they even care about me? Do they care about anything other than the money? Right? I mean, if it's all about the money and themselves, that's not going to fly for me. I want to do good business with good people, and I would rather do less business with good people than create a monster business, right? Now, here's the cool thing, and I'm going to give Jim a little plug here. Why are you all here? Specifically you. Because you guys are good people. Do you know why there are good people in this room? Because we have a good leader. Good leaders attract good people. That's how it works.
And Jeff knows me, I don't like talking about myself, so. I never knew you were like psychoanalyzing me though.
Oh yeah,
I didn't.
everyone.
I know all these times I thought
Yes.
we were just good friends, but
Oh, no.
it must be I made the cut somehow. He's been underwriting me this whole time. I had no idea. I
I've
thought
had-
we were just friends, you know?
I've had a lot of fun at other people's expenses over the years.
That's good. Anybody have an aha moment or a question you'd like to share with Jeff? Chuck? Oh, you've been doing a lot of lending. Do you love lending?
Love it, love it. Jeff, you get, as a lender, you get a lot of requests even each day.
Yes.
So how do you more quickly, I guess, assess the people who are asking for the loans?
So
Incredible question.
yeah, so obviously when someone applies for a loan, the first thing I see is actually not people, it's the property, right? So I can't stand email. I can't stand text messages from a business perspective. But because I don't like people, you know, it's just, right, it's that balance thing, right? So I require all of my staff is required to pick up the phone and call people. Because it's the only way you get it's the only way you get to know people. And man, it does not take long. I mean, people who are just not good people to do business with, it shows usually in the first 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just naturally it will happen. Bad people just can't hide being bad. And good people can't hide being good. It's just true. So We just do everything on the phone, and then only after we've had phone conversations do we follow up with an email to confirm what we talked about, and that's it. But we really get on the phones. I love phones.
There's another one right here.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. Really enjoyed it.
No, you got shut off.
I have a question because I'm an investor and I'm kind of starting to dabble into lending as well, and how
Yep.
you straddle the fence between both sides. I have a borrower on a particular deal. It's an owner finance scenario, and I'm just curious what you do in this situation. Borrower effectively can't provide a lot of documentation. Seems like a nice person, but I'm not getting anything from the borrower. But I love the collateral. Love the collateral, meaning, say it's a 300K property, the loan's less than 50% LTV. As an investor, I wouldn't mind owning said collateral. What's the biggest risk going into this whole thing, knowing that I love the collateral and don't like the borrower?
So the highest risk moment in every loan is after closing. It's usually that first 30 to 45 days right after closing is actually the highest risk period of a loan. Why? Because that's demo days. That's when the house, I don't care what you paid for it, it just became worth less. It's worth less than whatever's borrowed. So the question is, I know you say you want to own it, so you got to look at the money that you have set aside for the escrow funds, the scope of work. You got to look at all those things as part of the property underwriting and due diligence portion of it, and decide that if they go in, do the demo, and walk away, are you still good with it? And if the answer is yes, it's like, man, I would take that sucker all day long, then, you know, maybe you'll discount the value of the people a little bit because the asset for you is worth more, right? For me, I always put people first. But like I said, there's exceptions to every rule. Does that mean that there are deals that people present us that are, but we really like the asset? And if I had to take it back, I'd be okay with it, sure, and I'll do it.
Do you ever throw it out, like, say that scenario?
Oh, hang on, here. I'll run the mic around. You ask good questions every time.
That's the Leon coming out. So let's say his scenario, do you ever offer to do it as the principal in the situation? So like, let's say that the borrower can't provide good documentation. Can you offer, or do you ever offer it as like, hey, look, I'll do this deal as the principal, I'll bring the money in, and you can get paid on the back end a percentage?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you can do that. I typically use options when I do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a deal maker question, isn't it? Deal structuring?
Yeah.
It is a Leon question. Go ahead.
So when I do it, if I become the principal, I then give the non-borrower, borrower person, right, the guy that really wants it, I give them an option to purchase the property from me. And the option is essentially structured the same as a note. So I'm going to get paid the same either way. And if they fail, I already own it and I'm good with it. And if they succeed, when they get to the closing table, they're just exercising their option and essentially simultaneously transferring.
But you're giving them money to do the rehab.
Sure, yeah.
In pieces.
I like to control the rehab. Yeah.
Where does experience come in on like your checks and balances?
I usually check for experience in the people portion of it, right? Reagan said trust but verify, right? We've all heard that. That's kind of where it is. When you're having those phone conversations, you just talk to them like, well, you know, hey, this is a great project. What else have you done? You know, sometimes if projects are iffy too, I always say, well, what else do you own? Like, how can I do this?
For like someone who's pretty early in their like investing career, and like what tips do you have for them to bring their deal, or is it, you know, being more formal like the last presentation and like having like a spreadsheet, or is it again, you know, kind of building that relationship initially? Any tips for new investors?
I like partners. I love partnerships. My business partner, Derek, and I mean, we could come here together as a pair and we could do a presentation on just what it's like for business partners, and it would you guys would be floored at how it actually works between the two of us, because we're more like brothers than we are business partners. I've had bad experiences with partners. You know, you always hear the horror stories of partnerships. I still love them. The reason that they fail, though, is because people fail to ask the right questions. People don't do their due diligence. If you do the people part, and you guys do the due diligence on the people that you want to partner with, you can bring someone else in that has the experience, and you can accomplish things. One of the things that I usually tell people is stop looking at the cost of things. Now, I understand that there are costs that you have to pay attention to costs, but when you bring in a partner, I get so many people that say, I'm not giving up half the deal, as if they already have the money. That's not a cost. If you give up half the deal, you're making less. It doesn't cost you anything. It's not like you went, here, take my money. That's not it. That's a cost. That's a hard cost. You just make less. Find good people. Do business with good people. Partner with good people. This is a team sport. It's the network. I can't raise money without rooms of people like this that I can network with. You're new, you can't do deals easily without the same people that are in the same room that I'm trying to talk to, right? So partners are it. Yep, we can do that.
All right, I'm going to give you guys my 60 seconds on raising private capital. Do you want to hear it? Tell your story. Is it that easy? It really is. Tell your story, and you will attract capital. Believe me, I used to be an engineer. I'm not like a salesperson. I used to be an introvert. Don't want to pitch, market, sell. But if you tell your story, you will attract into your life people that you can work with. And it's that simple.